We could even bring attention to the unknown in this text. And that's the whereabouts of the missing, unmentioned mother. Now we know a certain man didn't have two sons. There had to have been a mother somewhere. But in our story, she does not even carry enough influence to be mentioned. So you got a rebellious son, a resentful son, and a missing mother. So I choose to rather highlight and celebrate a certain father. I would like to rewrite this story and call it the parable of the admirable father. The parable of the admirable father. In the face of all the confusion, contradiction, and calamity, I celebrate a man who refused to sell the farm, but he maintained the fences. He painted the barns. He planted the crops. He took care of the livestock. And he remained faithful, forgiving, and firmly committed. I've known Brother and Sister Green long enough to know that this church has not always looked like this. It has not always appeared like this. There had to be Sunday after Sunday when there was discouragement, when there was defeat, when there was disillusionment. But God somehow put it in him to come back to the pulpit and say in the face of it all, we're never going to sell this farm. His conviction appeared to be, someday my sons will want to come home. And there must be a recognizable home for him when he returns. It's already been said, but indulge me. How marvelous that when the prodigals return, they can recognize the home they left. I'm going to be real here just a moment. There's a lot of backslidden Pentecostals that are coming back to their home churches. And they're wondering, where did it go? This is nothing like what I left. This is nothing like I was raised in. This is nothing like was where my home was. I'm glad that when folks come back to the Apostolic Pentecostal church, they find we're still preaching, we're still praying, and we're still praising. We're still preaching one Lord, one faith, one baptism, Holy Ghost speaking in tongues, apostolic worship, miracles, signs, wonders, holiness, standards, covenants, identification with God. Thank God this still looks like home. Just in the brief time that we lost our home to the fire. It's only been over a week now, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. 3 times I know of, I've been in the city and I started home. And then I had to stop and realize it's not there anymore. It's not there anymore. What a horrible feeling to want to go home, but home is not there. How comforting to know if you get in a pig pen and smell like slop, there is still a home. There is still a home. I want backsliders to come back to the church I pastor and find it still home. That only happened because a father was certain and refused to give in, give up, or go back. And for years, maybe you got this revelation 40 years ago and I was slow coming to it. Bear with me. For years, I've heard it incorrectly sung about and even misquoted. That the prodigal said, I will arise and go to my father's house. Incorrect. The Bible says in Luke chapter 15 verse 18, I have sinned. I will arise and I will go to my father. The thing that brought that boy out of humiliation and degradation was not the father's house. It was the nature of his father. He just knew, if I can just get to where my father is, he will not resent me. He will not reject me. He will not criticize me. He will not condemn me. But I know my father well enough to know, if I can get where he is, everything's going to be all right. How different the story might have been had he sought futilely for an invisible mother. And it would probably have been even worse, Brother Powell, if he would have met his brother. And maybe that's why the Bible said the father ran. Because he knew, I got to beat this crazy other kid of mine. If I don't get to this boy first, he won't find his mother. And his brother is not going to welcome him home. Thank God for a pastor, I'll preach just a moment, who's had to resist some saints that weren't really as of the Spirit they should be. But the backsliders met the Father before they met the rebellious saints. Then I never made it back. So let me quickly show you the nature of a certain father or a certain man. The Bible said that when the prodigal started home, we have a walking prodigal and a running father. The father was more excited about the boy coming back than the boy was. This city is full of backsliders. If they just knew there was a church that would be more excited about them coming back than they are, these pews would be full. Somewhere there's got to be a church that won't sit on the front porch and say, bless God, he left home, he knows where it's at. But give us a church that will run and meet them. Besides that, you may be seated. The Bible said, while he was yet a great way off, we can't expect them to get all the way home without our help. And we can't wait till they get all the way home to love them. The main point is not where he was. It's where he was headed. We've got to love them not because they are there, but because they are headed the right way. And while he was a way off, he fell on his neck. He wasn't afraid of becoming tainted by the stink of the hog pen. Matter of fact, I've always heard this. You can tell a true shepherd from a fake by one thing. True shepherds will always smell like sheep.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So he ran to him. And so when he arrived home, the father turned to one of his servants and said, I love this, bring hither the fatted calf. Not just a calf. You know, servant, which one I'm talking about. It's the fatted calf. It appears to me that the day the boy left, the father stalled a calf. And every day he began to feed it. And he said, one day, my boy's coming back. And when he comes back, we're going to butcher you and we're going to have a celebration. It was a designated, demarcated, separated, specified, unique, saved calf. Not for any day, but for my homecoming party. For my son when he comes back. If you've got backsliders in your home, you need to start feeding a calf. Don't live in doubt or discouragement, but every day feed that calf, saying one day my boy's coming back. And when he comes back, we're going to have a celebration. My Lord, help us here. These young men, these green men, have all expressed how that, Brother Green is renowned for conservatism, for unbending, unwavering commitment to standards and to conviction and to holiness. But there is a side of him that you wouldn't know unless you were in this church. It's just like one time I was preaching a camp meeting. And you know how Patsy is. Just gun barrel straight. So I preached at this camp meeting years ago. And this guy, he's awesome. Eyes. About the sermon. All this stuff. And he says, I would love for you to be my pastor. My wife's standing right there. She steps up and she says, I doubt that. Because there's a difference in a camp meeting preacher and a pastor. And you can see somebody on the platform of a conference, but that's not the pastoral role.
That's right.
You feel that role, then you go home and feel the other role. But the role that you don't know about Jerry Green, unless you know him personally, is he is equally and even superiorly a man of mercy and grace and forgiveness. And that's why this church is what it is today. You're blessed with a certain man. He don't get up in the morning debating what he's going to preach. He don't get up in the morning and decide which way he's going to live. Every day is the same. Take your stand for holiness. Take your stand for doctrine. Take your stand for truth. But let the reputation go forth. You won't make it back to this church by yourself. Somebody's going to leave the porch. And while you're yet afar off, we're going to embrace you and say, come on back to the Father's house. And you may ask to be made a servant, but you'll never be a servant. You're going to be reinstated as sonship.